I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, take the roll, please.
Trustee Spurling. Here. Trustee Lee.
Yep.
Trustee Hines. Trustee Youngerman. Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
Trustee Bond.
Here.
And we do have a quorum this evening. Move on to public participation this evening. First, we have a public comment. If there's any member of the public that's here tonight that wishes to address the board, we have 2 people here. So if either of you would like to address the board, now would be your time. Otherwise, we will move on to another relatively quick item, display on the incorporation of the Village of Montgomery in 1858. So if you look off to the stage right, I guess, our Historic Preservation Commission put together these boards kind of memorializing the incorporation of the village 156 years ago yesterday. A vote was taken, and I believe it says there, but 30 residents voted, and what does it say, 27? 26 members voted in favor of incorporating, and 4 people were against it. So 30-4. So I'm glad that they voted that up. So I don't really have much of a presentation on that, but again, there's plenty of information over there, and check it out. And that will be on display, I think, here in the lobby for some time. So if nobody has any exciting tidbits to add from then, we'll move on. Items for discussion this evening. The first one, the FY15 General Fund Budget. You have an attachment in your packet in a PowerPoint. And with that, I'll kick it off to...
I can start. I mean, this is going to be the first of many discussions we have, as we do every year, about the budget. I believe Justin's going to focus on the general fund tonight. And with that, I will turn over to him, and I will fire up the PowerPoint.
Over overview of fiscal year 14 budget and where we expect to end this year. The projected revenues and expenses, this is all funds, not just general fund. The projected revenues and expenses include Lakewood Creek Special Assessment Area, which, if you look at the budget versus the projected on both of those, they're higher. That is approximately $1.1 million. It was not previously budgeted, but I've added it to the budget for this coming year, so that's why you're seeing those comparison numbers there. In addition, beginning contribution of $387,000 is being made to the Vehicle Reserve Fund from the general fund and has been included in the fiscal year 14 budget. So those 2 items, approximately $1.5 million between the 2 of them, is what is making the projected numbers higher. The general fund overview. The budget, we budgeted $9.4 million in revenue and $9.3 million of expense to come to a net income of $127,000. Our projections are for $9.9 million of revenue and $9.8 million of expense for a net income of $70,000. There are 2 main items that make up the difference in the projected revenue. Those 2 items are the sales tax is estimated to be approximately $240,000 higher than budget. And the second is dispatch revenue is estimated to be approximately $230,000 higher than budget. So those 2 numbers make up the main difference there. There are also several items that make up the difference in projected expense. One of the items I just mentioned, the vehicle reserve contribution, there is a total contribution of $387,000 that will be made out of fiscal year 14, and that is made up of police at $195,000, public works at $175,000, and then community development at $17,000. The second item is a streets transfer to establish a separate refuse fund. That is approximately $97,000. And then the third item that, why the expense is a little bit higher in projections, is the purchase of 213 Main behind the Village Hall here. We expect to end the year with a fund balance of approximately 36.8%. And I understand there is a board policy of 25%, so we are expected to be above that at the end of the year. A few projects that we accomplished during fiscal year 14, and Village President Rowley, you mentioned all of these in your speech last week. First is a comprehensive plan. We expect to have that completed by April 30th. Next is the transfer of dispatch to KenCom. That was completed in October. The Orchard Road Tax Increment Financing District, which was approved last month by the board. Boulder Hill Water Main Upgrade, that is the, Phase 1 has been completed. Next is the 3rd Avenue Water Main and Stormwater Improvements. And last but certainly not least is the annual MFT program, and those are the streets that were completed during the last year. 8 new employees were hired during fiscal year 14, although only 2 of those were new positions. First was Christine Wagner. She replaced an existing water billing clerk, myself. Mark Wolf was hired to replace Joe Shuns.
There's no replacing Joe Shuns.
There's no replacing Joe Shuns. Officer, Mike Leichuk, did I get it right? Okay. Was hired as a police officer. Jenna was hired to replace Judy. Megan was hired to replace Rachel. Anthony was hired as a police officer. And last, but certainly not least, sitting to my left, Director of Community Development, Rich Young. So moving into the fiscal year 15 budget, and this is the recommended budget that we're going through. First, looking at the requested items, we had revenue projected at $26,585,000 and expense requested of $29,282,000. After considering all of the items, the recommended budget includes $25.5 million of revenue and $25.8 million of expense. One of the items that makes the expense slightly higher is using up some of the remaining bond money from the bonds that were issued in early 2013. So, for the general fund, as an overview, we'll go through the requested first. We had requested revenue of $9.152 million, expense of $10.2 million. So we started with a net loss of over $1 million. And what we have come down to is revenue of $9.154, an expense of $9,146,000 for a net income of $7,900. That would allow us to end fiscal year 15 with a fund balance of 39.7%, which again is above the 25%. Overall revenue in the general fund from fiscal year 14 to fiscal year 15 decreased by approximately $750,000. That is made up of 3 main items. First is refuse revenue has been moved to its own fund, and that's approximately $1.2 million. Dispatch revenue has been discontinued, which is approximately $0.3 million, and then sales tax is scheduled to increase by approximately $0.6 million and will be discussed in a couple slides. Overall, an expense in the general fund decreased from the estimated fiscal year 14, which we just went over, by approximately $700,000. This is also made up of 3 items. Number 1 is refuse expense has been moved to its own fund. That's about 1.2. Sales tax agreements are scheduled to increase by 0.4, and then vehicle reserve contributions have been budgeted at approximately $250,000. For revenue in the general fund, 3 equals 80, and I figured out what it meant.
Uh-huh.
3 revenue sources make up over 80% of the village's general fund revenues. The first is sales tax. Sales tax is being budgeted at $3.5 million, and there's a graph on the bottom that shows historically where we've been and for fiscal year 15, where we are looking to go. 2 notes. We estimated a 2% increase over fiscal year 14 sales tax, existing sales tax, and then we also looked at the addition of Sam's Club during fiscal year 15. The second item is property taxes. That amount is $2,127,000. The total represents an increase of approximately $74,000 above the 2012 levy extension. I do want to note that we did freeze the tax levy on existing property, but we did increase it based on the new property. So that $74,000 is on the new property, not the existing property. The table at the bottom shows the EAV of all the property in the village and is split between Kendall County and Kane County. As you can see by the chart, there we are slightly under where we were at in 2006 EAV. So the EAV has gone down the last several years. The third item is income tax. Is approximately $1.7 million. This is based on an IML estimate, which they come out with every year, of approximately $94.70 per capita for fiscal year 15. This is a decrease from the current year, a slight decrease of about $12,000. Included in the fiscal year 15 budget, and we're moving to expenditures now, the first item we are going to talk about is personnel. We are recommending the following new positions. First is Village Hall reception. We've included 2 part-time receptionists in the budget who would assist in answering the phones and serving residents at Village Hall, and would be a shared position between administration, community development, and finance. The second is the addition of a police officer, which is recommended during November 2014. It would supplement our existing force and bring our sworn personnel to 26 full-time. We are recommending a promotion of a sergeant to the level of lieutenant. This is included in the budget. It's similar to surrounding departments and would assist in the overall administration of the police department. There are 2 changes that we are recommending. The first is a change in a title to an existing position, which would be a change to accounting manager from customer service specialist with a corresponding change in salary. And last but certainly not least is the increase in hours of the code enforcement officer from part-time to full-time. This would add hours, and then it would also add benefits to that position. Any questions so far? Should I ask that before? Moving on to insurance expenditures. First is health insurance. We've budgeted a 12.5% premium increase at renewal. This is based on historical percentages where we've been over the last few years. Next is dental insurance. We've budgeted a 7.5% increase at renewal for that. And then life insurance, we've budgeted a 5% increase at renewal. Last would be liability insurance. We've budgeted a 7% premium increase at renewal. That is also based upon historical percentages for liability insurance through MICA. Couple of planning items. The first item that's been included is the strategic plan. The strategic plan would consider the vision, goals, and objectives necessary to continue to move the community forward after the conclusion of the new comprehensive plan. The second item is the form-based code for the Mill District. We have included the specific portion of the Unified Development Ordinance for the Mill District in the budget. However, the larger portion has been excluded at this time. Several capital items that are included in the general fund. The first is seal coating. The Public Works parking lot has been budgeted for fiscal year 15. Village Hall is budgeted for fiscal year 16. And then Police Department is budgeted for fiscal year 17. This is on a 3-year rotating cycle between each of the 3 buildings. The next item is 213 Main Street. We purchased the property this year and then currently have budgeted for demolition of the existing structure in fiscal year 15. Last item in capital that has been included in the general fund is fuel pumps and related software out at the Public Works facility. A couple of other items in expenditures that we've talked about a little bit already. The village is going to reestablish the vehicle reserve fund by contributing the annual average over the next 10 years. We will utilize a contribution in fiscal year 14 to build up to 100% contribution in fiscal year 17. So we'll start with fiscal year 14 contributing a beginning balance. Fiscal year 15 will be at 50%. Fiscal year 16 will be at 75%. And then fiscal year 17 will be 100% over the next 10 years, such that in 2024 it will be fully funded. In addition, the village took an inventory of all IT equipment to help us devise when replacements to IT need to be made. 11 computers and other miscellaneous equipment are scheduled out of the general fund for replacement during fiscal year 15. And with that, take any questions, or if there's any comments, certainly address those that the board may have.
Thank you, Justin. Who would like to ask the first question? Normally it would be Steve, but he's not here tonight, so.
Have we completed our 2x2s?
Yes.
Can we see the notes from the other sessions?
Sure, we can put those together for you.
There are some items in the budget still that I remain to be convinced about, but I would like to see what the other trustees have expressed as well.
I think we've heard from a few of you on some of those, so if you'd like to discuss that now. I know a couple items we'd heard about from some of you was the demolition of 213 Main. So that's certainly,
Well, one of the suggestions that I made was if we could split that cost over 2 budget years. And I thought we had talked about it once. I think Steve had suggested it. That we could budget half of the money this year for 15, half in 16, and then do the demolition because there's no urgency to lose the property. So if we could spread the cost across the 2 years and amortize it a little bit, it might not be such a hit to the budget.
What was the budgeted amount for the
30,000.
30,000.
demo?
So if we did 15 this year, 15 next year, it would at least split the costs over the 2 years, since we're really not going to be doing anything with the property anyways.
With that, so I know some of the board members sort of just wanted to let it go for now and not budget it at all. So we did have some different discussions there.
I had mentioned that I thought we could wait on the demolition until we had more of a plan of what we were going to do with that property.
I agree with that as well, unless there's some hazard that we're not aware
We
of.
probably need to spend a little bit of money and do some maintenance though, because the paint is peeling pretty bad on the side of the building, and I certainly don't want to have the village own a blighted property, or that's an eyesore right next to Village Hall. So we might need to spend a little bit of money to at least make it a little bit more cosmetic.
So if you'd like, we can certainly remove that item. It sounds like there seems to be consensus for that. We can look at leaving a small amount in to do some upkeep.
Yeah, I mean,
And it's not in, there's no hazard leaving it up. I mean, I know it's not in great shape, but is it going to be a problem this year if we don't?
Has that ever
My
gone
understanding
up?
is,
Excuse me. Did you take it out for bid to demolition?
No, right now it's requested to be in the budget to demo,
I think it should be taken out for bid. That's a lot of money to tear that house
and I
down.
think that's the intent. The intent would be that we would go out to bid. But it sounds like generally, we don't want to do that in fiscal year 15, and so we'll hold off and revisit it again in the next budget cycle.
and that demolition is just the house, correct? We're leaving.
And the garage, I think, too.
I thought we were leaving the garage structure.
I think we'd request to leave the garage if the building department felt it was structurally sound. We use it to store some winter maintenance gear. I think HPC may have some materials in it, so it'd be possibly a request to keep that part of it. And I don't know what the building report is on the condition of the structure or the interior of the structure. Excuse me. So it's hard to say exactly what maintenance would go into it right now.
I
guess we
think,
could check with
yeah,
them.
I think the interior, I mean, we wouldn't want anybody inhabiting it, but I think it's sound for that. So really, we'd just be looking at to maintaining the appearance of the outside and leaving the inside as it is, since we don't plan on having anyone in there.
Yeah, I think the fire department, it wasn't deemed safe for a burn house even.
Right. It's,
The Mill District coding, I would value some other opinions on that. My thought was, while that may be worth doing, it may not be something that we need to do at this moment.
I know just about this much about that. Rich, can you expand on what that project would be?
Well, essentially, it's a combination, a unified development code, in essence, puts together the zoning ordinance and the subdivision regs so that it's one code. And what we were suggesting, in lieu of doing the entire village with one code, we would test it essentially with the Mill District. It's definitely something that could be put off if need be. We have not we have not solicited any bids in terms of requests for consultant help to do that work. So the dollar amount is not a known factor at this point in time, but that was an estimate on what it would take. Might come in a little bit less than that, but that was kind of a worst-case scenario on testing the concept of a unified development code.
Is this,
What's the upside to unifying this code for us, to
Sure.
the village? What's
Well,
the advantage?
I would say that the upside is that if a developer was interested in a property or a block within the Mill District, then it's kind of a one-stop shop. It expedites development activity, and obviously, I think we're all in favor of looking at something happening with the downtown and the Mill District, so it would expedite development and the development review process by having just one code instead of going through the subdivision regs and the zoning ordinance separately. It basically combines the two.
I'd like to see us pursue some grants for this kind of a project. I know that everybody probably is, but this has grant project written all over it. I work with zoning ordinances and that, every day. And while it is hard to kind of navigate through many different documents, at least from my opinion, at least the nationwide or the bigger builders and developers navigate that stuff. It's not going to turn them away from the village, but it doesn't speed it as long as nicely. So I'd like to see us look for grants for this, but otherwise hold off on the Mill District part of the project this year.
everybody have a general consensus to hold off on that
Yes.
project then? Okay.
Could we discuss the receptionist for a bit? feel like I'd benefit from some perspective on what kind of counter traffic we have and how it's currently handled.
Certainly. Would you like to address the front counter currently and how the
Sure.
phones are handled?
Currently, how the front counter is handled, and this is not just front counter, it's also the call volume coming in. Right now, one of Rich's employees is the main person that answers the phone. So she is probably not fully able to do her job because she's on the phone so much. If somebody comes up for building permit questions or what have you, she may be on the phone already. So she's not able to address that. In addition, on the water billing side of things, especially, you know, when bills are due or when shut-offs are done, there can be, everybody can be up at the counter at the same time trying to help residents get the bill paid, get it into the system and so forth, and nobody's there to answer the phones. So this person would also assist utility billing from the end of whether it's somebody at the counter or whether it's answering the phones for them. Basically, it would help both departments have that one extra person that could actually address somebody's concern at the counter or on the phone, so.
How many people do we have in the water area there behind the counter?
Right now, we have 3.
Do any of, and one of them at least has public interaction responsibilities?
Yes,
Do the other 2 as well, or?
all 3 of them currently have responsibilities, yes.
One question I had on that, I was talking to Jeff today, is we've seen requests for receptionist-type positions for here at Village Hall and also at Public Works, and to some extent at the PD. I'd like to see us, maybe this year, think creatively with how phones are answered village-wide. I know that our phone system won't allow a call center type thing, but if we have if we have 5 or 6 different employees answering, you know, phone calls and also doing part of another job, maybe it would be more efficient if we centralize that. I don't know if it works or not, but when I see this in multiple departments, everybody's looking for a part-time or a full-time to do that. Maybe that might be something we could benefit from next year.
We discussed that, and as I said, we'd have to upgrade our phone system to allow that right now. Right now, the 3 buildings are not connected that way, where we could have a call center basically in one building and be able to transfer to the different buildings, but that's certainly something we can look at.
Wasn't a new phone system?
That's one of our technology items, yes. That'll be, it wasn't in this year's budget, because we didn't deem it our top priority.
But it's in,
But it'd be in one of the next budgets, because our phone system
So it's-
here and
it's not
all
in the
buildings.
15?
No, it's not in 15.
The voice over IP is maybe one technology.
Right, that's certainly, I think, what we'd be looking at. So what our IT consultants have said, that's kind of where things are going.
It's tempting to suggest that we balance the cost of doing that now with the cost of bringing in additional personnel that have a limited focus in what they would be able to do.
I mean,
That's something we can investigate.
the phone system is, I've called here several times because I don't have everyone's direct line, so I've called and I called one day and I think the phone rang 15 times before anybody answered it. And it's not acceptable. In the business world, it would never happen. Somebody has to answer the phone, or it has to kick to something. It wasn't going anywhere. It wasn't going to a voicemail. It wasn't giving me any options other than sitting there and just waiting for someone to pick up or hang up and call back and try again. And in our office, we have a receptionist, and we have the person that backs her up. If she needs to go to the washroom, this person has to be at their desk. They can't leave. If she goes to lunch, this person has to be there. If the receptionist is out, this person becomes responsible, and somebody else backs her up. And it seems like there's a little bit of a disconnect at that front end with the phones, that people are either on the phone or not able to truncate and balance it and get to the call, put people on hold if you need to. Something is missing. So if it's a, matter of new phone system that'll allow the the phone to ring, back to Debbie and then possibly into the water department so that there's 3 people that might be able to pick up a call during a busy cycle. I think it's definitely worth visiting.
We can certainly do that. Debbie usually backs up, but it just depends with her doing her job and the deputy clerk, and then Tula being the only one that handles the front counter for building, that community development, we find times where, yeah, it ring. Now, it's not supposed to just ring and ring, it is supposed to go to an answering, so we'll have to look at that, but.
Yeah, it didn't,
And then water has their own line that they answer over there. There's a separate line for water billing.
Jeff, we do not have someone who works directly with you as an assistant?
Debbie,
So she's deputy clerk and
yes,
assistant?
yes. Yeah, she's been executive assistant, but then she took on the deputy clerk duties, so she's doing both of those. And she backs up, like I said, Tula on the phones.
And you chose to discuss receptionist additions rather than additional support in that area?
Yes, I think I'm doing
You're doing
I'm doing
okay?
okay with the support I have. It seems more between the front counter and residents calling in is where we have the need.
If there's time, I sure would support exploring what the phone technology might cost.
We will certainly talk about it. Our IT guys are in this week, so we'll talk to them and see what we think we could do.
Your problem is they have caller ID. They know it's you.
Watch what you wish for.
Any other comments on the receptionist type stuff?
No, totally.
I just wanted to point something out that I noticed when I first looked at this, and I'd mentioned it to Jeff. In FY15, our police pension contribution is $455,000. 4 years ago, it was half that. So it's doubled in 4 years. And that comes out of our general fund, out of our tax levy. And so when we tax the residents $2 million, and that doubles in size in 4 years, that just decreases the amount of usable money that we have for other things. And that we have no control over that $450,000, and that's gone up that much. So kind of just wanted to highlight that because it's eating up a sizable chunk of our $2 million levy where it didn't used to, so.
that number will just continue to increase too, as we add officers?
Yes, that's correct. It will, that is true.
I think the other good news that was mentioned earlier is we're returning to a sustainable vehicle replacement plan now, where in previous years we've had to make do with what we had. And the right thing to do is to budget for that replacement program and keep it in effect. So that's in the budget.
Yeah, Justin, I really appreciate you finding a way to make that happen. We've been talking about it for years, and there just wasn't funds available, so thank you.
There was some public works equipment that was presented to us that was requested. Are we not getting to that yet, or did it not survive?
I think the arborist equipment.
Arborist equipment.
Is still in there.
Yeah.
That is, did not put that
I
in.
think we didn't
That is in
highlight
the-
that tonight, but the arborist equipment is still in there.
It is in the general
Correct,
fund.
$11,000, I believe.
Yeah, I mean, I can share with you what that's intended for. It's a variety of things, safety equipment for chainsaw use. Basically, they're chain-resistant pants that the guys put on over their regular stuff. That's $500. Saw chains for $100. 2 new saws and 1 new leaf blower for a total of $1,300. 400 watering bags for tree watering at $6,400. And then a hydraulic chainsaw, which would be used in the bucket truck. It's safer than the gas-powered chainsaws when you're working at height, for $2,500. So that's how we got our $11,000. So it's a variety of items, but
I was comfortable with that. I just was concerned that maybe it had gotten lost in the effort to balance the budget.
I think it's still in.
It's still included.
It
in
is.
there.
Yes,
We're
it's
just-
there.
We're trying not to glaze you over tonight. Justin was trying to hit the highlights.
Well, I had actually contacted Mike and asked him about that, because I was unaware that it was multiple small items. I thought it was, we were buying an $11,000, what is it?
Real
Thank you.
big saw.
I do want to comment, the weather warning siren, which to me is really hard to say, but tornado siren was funded this year, or at least proposed. I'm happy to see that there. I know we've talked about that a lot.
That'll come up, yeah, it's in the capital improvement.
Oh,
fund.
I'm skipping ahead.
So we'll discuss that. Trying to spoil Justin's reveal.
Pull them back. Pull them back.
I had one other question. That's not tonight, is it?
That is not tonight
Okay.
either.
Just skipping ahead.
Only the pages that were printed in your packet are for.
Yeah, but I have my notes here, so.
I had to do a little jumping back and forth myself there.
And again, even though we'll move on to other funds after this is certainly not your only opportunity to chime in on the general fund. I mean, throughout the process, we're happy to talk about any of the funds, so if other questions you
I know that
think of
this,
come up.
this whole packet is obviously available on the website. Could you post the draft budget on the website? Because we've had comments last year where we would receive it at the same time as residents, but we had residents complaining that they didn't have adequate time to review the budget. If we put up the draft that everybody has seen and we're seeing, then we can go from there.
Sure, we'll put the recommended budget up on the website so everybody can see it.
Excellent.
A comment, if I may. I think the process this year has been excellent. It's been well organized. It's been thorough. It's my third time, I think, to go through this. And it's been understandable. It's been well presented. I'm appreciative of the work that's gone into it.
Good, thank you, appreciate it. Justin's put in a lot of time, and he's done a good job.
Thank you.
Put a magnifying glass with them.
Get on the Doug Marisak plan.
Huh?
Get on the Doug plan.
When you send Jeff the ream of paper, he printed mine on the big paper.
He brought me in a ream of 11 by 17 paper, and so he gets his stuff printed on that now.
For those of you that don't understand, that this is what it looks like when they put it on their paper. And you need a magnifying glass. Stan and I were in shock. So,
All right, are there any other comments on the general fund budget? If you have any, bring them up at the next meeting or email them to staff directly. And I know what everybody's been waiting for. We'll move on to the tree survey, which we're going to table tonight. So I know there's a lot of people that are disappointed that we're not going to learn about trees. But Steve, being a horticulturist, I'm sure is tickled that we're going to do that when he's here. Move on to item C this evening, which is Well 8 update. And with that, I will kick it over to Director Poobens.
Just briefly, we're continuing to work on the Well 8 repairs. I'll be meeting with Engineer Wallers and some of his staff later this week to discuss our motor options. We have several motor options to purchase a variety of brands of motor and new or refurbished motors. So we're trying to weigh all those options and figure out which one is best for us. We're probably looking at 8-week to 10-week delivery on any motor that we choose. It might be slightly lower if we purchase a new one. They tend to have some of those in stock. So the final resolution of the Well 8 problem is still a few months away, and we'll have more information for you. And obviously, before we purchase anything, we'll bring that before the board for discussion and approval.
Pete, how old was that motor? I remember we had one at 50 years old that I couldn't believe. How much?
Is that it? Okay. Move on to department updates.
All right, we'll start with Chief Myers.
Good evening, thank you. On March 22nd, 2014, we will have the Respect for Law banquet in Kendall County. I will send you additional information for tickets and the deadline to purchase those tickets. Officer Hull has completed his 6th week in the academy. He's in the top 10% with a 91.75 average, so he's doing really well in the academy. He'll graduate on March 28th, next month. So we've received 3 evaluations so far, so he's progressing very well in the academy. That's all I have. Thank you.
Director Poobens.
Thank you. Last week was quite hectic for Public Works. We had a number of frozen water service lines, 11 in total. That's by far the most that I've experienced during my tenure. We had one a couple winters into my job as director, so we've had 11. Generally requires that we go out and dig down to the water main, which is generally in the pavement, and then dig down to the shut-off valve, the B box, which is, usually in the front yard. And then we, with Comer's Welding helping us, we run a current through that section of the service line. It heats up the pipe and thaws the ice. Some of them can defrost fairly quickly. Some of them take 4-6 hours. So the guys were extremely busy with that last year. We're going to see a pretty decent-sized bill just from using Comer's. We did have some other contractors help us with some of the digs, so I'll bring those numbers to you when I get them. We have had a problem of, we instruct the people who live in those homes to leave their water running at like a pencil thickness to prevent refreeze, and for some of them that we thawed out on Saturday and Sunday, we got calls already on Monday that they had refrozen, and my concern is that people may not be following that guideline for fear of having to pay for higher water. So we'll be working with those people to try to get service back to them. Right now, we're focusing on snow removal and flood prevention, quite honestly, for later this week with the higher temperatures. So you may get some phone calls. If you'd like to transfer them to me, that would be fine, or you can talk to those folks themselves. But that was the highlight of last week. A salt update. We're holding our own on salt. We don't have a lot left. We've reached our 120% maximum through the state program. I was able to find a supplier, or a local trucking company that has a supplier out of state, and he is looking to haul some in for $200 per ton. Our current rate is $56 per ton. I can tell you the 200 per ton is kind of the going rate now for road salt, being in such high demand, and quite honestly, the transportation fees to bring it as far away, it's not surprising that it's that much. Our challenge will be, our money's been budgeted in MFT, and to use MFT funds, you have to have purchased through programs that the state feels have been not properly, but adequately bid. If we were to pursue the purchase of this salt, my feeling is, and I haven't worked with Engineer Wallers or his staff, one gentleman in particular is quite knowledgeable on MFT. We may not be able to use MFT funds to pay for that salt, so I'm assuming that would come out of the general fund. So my opinion is that we should pursue it. If we can get it, we'd be looking at about $30,000 that we would spend. That would keep us under our $160,000 annual budget. Again, the challenge would be that $30,000 would most likely have to come from somewhere other than MFT. So that's where we're at. So it's not locked in yet that we can get it. We're still working with the guy. So I'd be happy to answer any questions on that, but just to give you some idea of where we're at. They're calling for warmer temperatures this week, but they do have more precipitation in for further out. Not a lot, but a series of storms coming in. So,
It was 41 degrees today. Spring is here.
pardon me?
41 degrees today. Spring is here. We're done.
That's the guy right there. When we get 6 inches of snow next week, that's him. He said it, not me. I hope it is. I hope it is. I mean,
Do we have the
we've been stretching our
availability?
salt usage, as you can see in the neighborhoods. We've been mainly plowing the secondary streets, so people are driving on snowpack. We did get some melt today, which was very helpful. Still salting the primaries and any hazardous intersections or hills, so. I'm sorry.
Are there other items that we might be able to put into MFT funding to kind of swap the budget a little bit that we didn't use?
I'd have to look into that. I haven't really considered that.
If there's other things that we have in the budget, in the general fund, that we could switch.
It's a good suggestion. Thank you. I will look at that. There's a pretty wide variety of items that you can use MFT for. We tend to always, look at 2 or 3, mainly pavement work and salt and things like that, so.
and you know that if we end up paying $200 a ton and it doesn't snow again, we'll get calls and emails. But if we don't do this and it snows, we have a real problem. So I think while we're all hesitant to really comment or say too much about it, you have to do what you have to do.
I would agree, President Brawley, and you know, we dodged a little bit of a bullet. I mean, we weren't that close to having freezing rain and icing, but, you know, downstate Illinois did. For a few days, they were calling for that weather to hit us. So, you know, obviously, if we get that type of storm, we have to put the salt down. I don't think too many would disagree that it wouldn't be in the public interest to do so. So we'll work at obtaining that, and we'll look into that suggestion on other funds that we might be able to, or other projects that we can transfer over to MMT.
All right.
That's all I have.
Director Van Voren.
Thank you. Just wanted to make the board aware, we have met with a bond consultant to look at restructuring our debt service on the Village Hall and the police station. We are looking at potentially moving forward with that and would hope to bring it back at a future meeting, as long as the board is okay with that. If there's any questions, I can certainly answer questions on that. But we would look at bringing it back fairly soon, potentially even next week, if the board is okay.
Are there any comments or questions specifically regarding that? I think Justin's had the opportunity to explain it to everybody at this point, and we'll go through it at the meeting when we do restructuring in detail, because obviously you don't have that tonight, but.
Correct.
Correct.
Director Young.
Thank you. I just wanted to inform the board that this week we have received 2 more single-family building permits, so that brings the total this year to 8. We also have a handful of permits that have not been picked up yet that are waiting just for the ground to thaw. So we have more than 10 that should be starting construction this spring, and probably a few more. We're working on a concept plan for Aurora University and their sports complex that they'd like to have off campus on an 88-acre site that's south of Jericho Road. So we'll keep you informed on that as we go forward. We know that Aurora University is looking at a number of different sites, and we want to try to get ahead of the curve and see if that can be something that could be incorporated into the village. I've been working with the MEDC director on planning for the ICSC show, along with marketing programs, and then also a review of the strategic plan, and then following up with a discussion that we've had previously about local business visits. We're going to break those out into 2 different types of visits. One would be for business retention, primarily with myself and the director going out to area businesses to talk about business retention and what their needs are, but then also, for lack of a better term, a meet and greet for myself and President Brawley to meet businesses or owners of properties and businesses that we have not met in the last year or so, in his case, and in the last couple of months from myself. So we'll do a series of those each month and report back to the board on how those go and what the commentary is. And then finally, the comp plan. We held a committee meeting last week, provided the consultant with some additional comments. We're focusing in on the area, sub-area plans, and then also the implementation plan, which is section 12 of the document that was just recently put together. So continue to work with the consultant. Our goal is to bring that to the Plan Commission at the public hearing on March 13th, and then, as reported, have this item to the village board in April so that we can have action by the end of April.
Rich, I just wanted to comment real quick on the AU complex. I think that is an extremely proactive approach to trying to solidify them going in Montgomery. I know we've been talking with them for a better part of a year, but that, I think you're onto something with that.
Those are updates for this evening.
Excellent. All right, is there any new or unfinished business to come before the board this evening?
I'd just like to ask Mr. Waller something. Pete, have you considered putting Seasons Ridge Boulevard to do that road this year? That thing's got about 50 holes in that road, and they can't be patched anymore. That road has got to be torn up and rebuilt. That road's terrible.
Yeah, we'll have to take a look at it. I think we'll see that there may be several roads this spring that we're gonna have
I
to
mean-
take a second look at.
Out of all the streets in the village, that's the worst road I've seen.
Yeah. I think what you're seeing there too is a case of a road that is generally degrading faster than the typical curve that we would expect. So,
Lot of traffic,
Pardon me?
lot of traffic.
so we can take a look at it. I mean, it's, you know, it all comes down to resources and
I've never seen a road in the village as bad as that one. You can't drive down there without missing a hole. And it's been patched so many times. That road's gotta be fixed regardless.
I think anybody who's driven on
Yeah,
that will
yeah.
agree that it's not in good shape. I mean, there's
was
some
gonna bring it up as
potholes.
well.
Yeah.
You can't even maneuver down the street now.
You can't go down there without missing
No.
one.
And then Pete, the roads program update that it's budgeted for FY15, is that something that will get underway after May 1st, or is that something that we might be able to do?
Probably get underway after May 1st.
Okay.
We'll have the last year of the 5-year program scheduled for this
Mm-hmm.
construction season.
Okay. And all the roads, this is going to be a complete inventory of the village?
that's what we've requested.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Excellent.
I-
Any other
I have one more
comments?
item, yeah.
Trust?
Do we have contacts for the various utilities? There's, one of the utility boxes is actually wide open, and it's full of snow, and I tried to close it, and it's just so jam-packed with snow, trying to dig it out, I couldn't get it to shut. And now with the rain coming, I'm very concerned. It was AT&T.
Then you're safe. You're safe then.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Couple of items, if I may. For future consideration, I wanted to suggest the notion that we might want to increase the ticket amount for people who don't move their cars off of the village streets during a snow period. I have gotten a lot of comments and complaints from people who felt that had led to safety issues and mailbox delivery issues and difficulty seeing and navigating around corners. If I'm correct, I think our fine amount is $25. And while that would be enough for me, I'm kind of Scottish, but I think we might want to give some thought to increasing that to deter that kind of behavior.
To dovetail into that, I would suggest that we review the 2-inch. People don't get it. Don't park on the streets when it's snowing, period. People don't get 2 inches, they don't understand what 2 inches are, and sometimes Public Works is out there before there's 2 inches, if there's a heavy snowfall coming and they're doing some preliminary work and getting ahead of it. And, I mean, I have people that park on both sides of mine, so the snow in front of my driveway sometimes is 3 feet out into the street because the plow just can't get back in. It's not their fault, they're doing their job. These cars don't belong there. And it's, well, it started snowing, no. And I agree, $25 is nothing. Make it 50, 75, guess what? They're gonna move their car. And then, you know, because again, they're continually there. And and I don't know what the resolution is. You know,
Well-
calling a tow truck? I don't know.
I don't want to speak for our chief, but I believe that the number one goal for that, when we do find that or come up to that, is compliance, is to get people off the streets. We're not really interested in the $25. We need their car out of the way so we can plow.
That is correct. I also have had conversation with the finance director about possibly restructuring fees, and that would be one that we would look at. And I absolutely support what you said, Trustee Marisak, because to go to court, we need to have a printout from a reputable person who's recording the snowfall, not just me going out in front saying, oh, there's 2 inches. So I would support that. And then we need to educate everybody, of course, but
And I think there's possibly, regardless of the direction, there's probably some locations that we could probably do some signage. Because there's some areas, and and Director Poobens and I discussed this, that it's a safety hazard. These cars are there and they're in the way, and it's a safety hazard for the plows and for the residents. I suggested that I would like to see it like Chicago, and you just plow them from one direction right up to their bumper and come from the other way and have fun digging it out next time. But that's a little cynical. Again, compliance is probably the best way to go, but there's probably some areas in town that we could put some signage up to help make sure people know that there's no parking there, instead of just the ones that are on the entrances to subdivisions and things. I think we talk about Mayfield is one of those, and Rebecca, or some areas that, where it just gets tight. There's some townhomes and duplexes where the streets are narrow already. Now you put cars on there and snow, and it's, you know, it's pretty hazardous.
One other more cheerful comment, if I may. Once again, we've had a resident step forward in a volunteer way and organize a very successful and a very fun family event. Last weekend, the Eagle Watch, the bird tally. I wanted to thank John Amman for showing some leadership in doing that. It was a volunteer initiative. Nice article in the paper, and it sounded like 30, 40 people had a good time.
It was, I was there, Matt stopped by too, and it was great. I mean, I was absolutely shocked at the amount of people that came out and the amount of knowledge. I'm not a bird watcher, I'm not, you know, I brought my girls out to come out and help to support the event and be here, and we had a great time. We went down by the river and we looked. We didn't do the long hike down to where the fancy birds were. We got to go across the way here and count some ducks and some geese right behind the VFW because it was close. But it was very well organized. John had it down to a science. He had maps with locations and books here and some photos to pass around and give people some information. There was one couple that actually Judy and I were sitting talking to, and they declined to be interviewed and didn't really want to talk much, but it was their first time ever coming to anything like this, and they were from Aurora, and they came down to visit, and it was great. It was just great. There was several families here with their kids. So, yeah, my hat's off to John and everybody that came out to help.
Thank the village for enabling that. Give them a place to warm up and meet and organize.
Well, when a guy comes to present it and he already has the press release written, makes it easy. Any other comments? I do have two. Most of you know, State of the Village was on Thursday morning, had pretty awesome attendance. Probably more important than listening to me go on for 45 minutes is the number of businesses that we have here that bump into each other and meet and talk and make connections, and I think that's far better than anything that I talked about that day. The other thing that I was asking Jeff about, Debbie was working with Matt Fitzpatrick to have our DVR changed in here, and I think the board should be kind of up to speed on that. There was some IT glitch with that was prohibiting us from putting these meetings on the Aurora Community Television, and since they had that replaced, they brought the State of the Village over there and they said they can run it. So we'll talk about transparency all the time, and that's just one other avenue. There's people out there, believe it or not, who don't have internet and YouTube, and we'll see that on there. So just want to update you on that.
I would like to point out that the presentation, I'm not sure exactly who behind the scenes put it together, was fantastic. I mean, the PowerPoint was excellent. All the points that were made were spot on. It was clear and concise and to the point. It was well done. So, you know, thank you to whomever the appropriate people are behind the scenes that did that.
Debbie Buchanan put in a lot of work on she put the PowerPoint together and helped with the, getting all the information gathered for the speech, so.
And Jeff and everybody at that table and the chief.
Yeah,
So-
so thank you all for that. And also the reception up in the back and the food and presentation, it was all excellent. It was very well done.
Two people afterwards come up to me and say, I forgot that happened. And one of them was the mayor from Oswego, which I can understand, is not focused, and the other one was Youngerman. I forgot that we did that. So you forget over the course of 12 months, all these meetings, what has been accomplished. So I think hopefully it was beneficial, and we'll hope to do that in the future. Anything else this evening? If there isn't anything, we'll entertain a motion to go into executive session to discuss the employment of an employee pursuant to 5 ILCS 120/2 C1.
So moved.
Second?
Moved and second. Take the roll, please.
Trustee Bond?
Yes.
Trustee Spurling.
Yes.
Trustee Lee. Trustee Heinz. Trustee Marisak.
Yes.
I know you did.